Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
But aside from all of that, now it's time to go move on to a dogfight of a division, which is the AFC North, a division I've been waiting to talk about for a minute now. So, of course, as always, we got to kick it off with the record predictions.
Oh my god, like ranking this is like so goddamn hard. Like there's all these teams, like they have a tendency to just be able to beat each other at any moment. It's like the Office, the GIF where the guys are pointing at each other in a circle and they're just pointing a gun at each other. It's just like one team beats that's what I'm saying. Like one team beats the other team beats the other, and the other team beats the other. The Browns beat the Steelers beat the Ravens beat the Bengals, and vice versa, and everything. But when I look at this division, you just have to look at it, from an aspect of taking away the margins. And so you look at it, I think the Steelers could have a case of being the best defense in this entire division. You have, arguably the best defensive player in the entire NFL in TJ Watt. But, this offense, how much can I trust Kenny Pickett is a question mark. I think he showed flashes last season, especially making plays outside of the pocket. I think that was like his best moments, being able to get out the pocket. He's saw athletically, is able to make plays, extend him with his feet. But, inside the pocket, do I trust them as much? Najee Harris, I mean, when he took out the steel play in his foot, I think his play improved. But even then, there's whispers of, guys like Jalen Warren. Every single time I think I've watched the Steelers game, Jalen Warren came in, and I feel like he was that change of pace that exactly they needed. He was a lot more explosive than Najee. And so this offense, I don't know if I can trust it that much because they have one of the worst offense coordinators, if not the worst in the NFL, and Matt Canada. I don't think his offensive structure is diverse enough for them to get enough wins. But at the same time, like, part of me, I don't know how I feel about the Browns because, Deshaun Watson, like, he hasn't played football in about 2 years. And I'm not counting preseason. I'm talking about, like, he played a couple games to end the season, or 3 or 4 games to end the season last year. And it just wasn't enough of a sample size because he didn't look good in those games. He had his moments in the first half of a couple games, but outside of that, it wasn't consistent enough of a sample size to say, Deshaun Watson is back. This offense is here. And so, like, part of me, I think I'm deciding, and I'm going to put the Browns at the bottom of this division. I have them finishing 7-10 just because I don't know how much I can trust Deshaun Watson off that sample size that he had last season. I don't know if that's a quarterback that we're going to be seeing. Of course, he got reps this offseason and preseason, but even then, I still don't feel like he needs to prove it to me for them to even, a lot of people are looking at this team like, now they're going to be pushing for a Super Bowl, or they're going to be one of the better teams in the entire AFC, and I need to see it to believe it. And so I'm going to put these guys at 7-10. I understand that their offense has pieces with Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore and Donovan Peoples-Jones and, ever steady Nick Chubb in the backfield and that solid offensive line. But I don't know. Until Deshaun Watson, I feel like I can trust him. I'm going to put him at the bottom of this division at 7-10. The next team up in this division, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I mentioned, the defense always going to be top notch. And Mike Tomlin, we know who he is. He's going to finish 500 every single year. Somehow, if these guys were to go 1-10, they're finding a way to even up. They're finding a way to go 500. So they have the worst OC in the entire NFL, but their defense gives them a high enough floor. And I think Kenny Pickett is going to improve in year 2. I expect more touchdowns to come Deontay Johnson and George Pickens' way. And Najee Harris, if he is who he's drafted as, if the offensive line improves and he improves his vision, I think this team can definitely get 8 to 9 wins. I'm gonna be a little bit more on the pessimistic side and say these guys are gonna go 8 and 9. These next 2 teams are the 2 teams that I believe have a gap between them in the division.
Yeah, you got Mike Tomlin positive record ending this year.
I'm being a little pessimistic. I'm saying they're going 8 and 9, but it would not surprise me at all if Mike Tomlin finds a way to go 500. Like, least shocking thing ever if he goes 500. Like I said, these guys can go 1-8 and they're gonna somehow finish 500. But this next team up, these 2 teams, there's a little gap between them and the rest of the division. That's how I view it. I think this is going to be the season where I think the Bengals are going to finish second in this division. And so I have them finishing with 10 wins here. They're gonna go 10-7, possibly 11-6, but I got them finishing 10-7. Of course, we know how this team is with their offense. They have one of the most potent passing offenses in the entire NFL. They can go toe to toe with anybody. Uh, they brought in Orlando Brown, Lyle Collins. That was a disaster for them bringing him in. It just didn't work. But at the same time, I just have a lot of faith in this Ravens offense. And when I look at it with Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers and OBJ and Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman and J.K. Dobbins, I have a lot of faith. And their defense is as good as anyone, especially ever since they got Roquan Smith. They were absolutely balling out in the second half of the season. J.K. Dobbins averages about 6 yards a carry every single time this guy touches the field. The unfortunate thing is he cannot stay on the field that much. But I think this season where he puts together a healthy season, and so this Bengals thing is like splitting hairs. But I think the Ravens defense edges them out more. The Bengals off defense does show up a lot more in the playoffs. But I do have a question. I was wondering, what is the status update with Joe Burrow's injury? That's the one thing that I've been thinking about. What is the outlook for him?
Came to practice today, right?
Yeah, he came back to practice today, man. He was in pads and a helmet, and so it looks like he's on track to be playing week 1.
Okay. Even then, I still believe in the Ravens just a bit more. I have the Ravens finishing 11-6 in this division, just because Lamar Jackson finally has the weapons surrounding him. He finally has the ability to make plays with his arm and not constantly with his feet. Of course, he can do magical things with his feet, but I think this is a season Lamar Jackson puts together a monster season. So I have them finishing 11-6.
Yeah, for me, man, this division right here kind of reminds me of how the NFC West was looking like a couple of years ago. All 4 teams just making it look like it's going to be a bloodbath there. Every team's going to be fighting, and every team got some pieces. They got some stars on the team. They got some great pieces. They got a great roster, but I think the Browns will probably end up as 4th in the division. I feel like like I'd be said, Deshaun Watson he doesn't have that many games. Really hasn't played in 2 years. Like I'm not going to count those last 3 to 4 games that he came in last year, where it was the end of the season and he was trying to get his legs under him. I just feel like the quarterback play is going to be an issue for them. But to me, I don't know. They got a great run game. They picked up Elijah Moore. They already have Amari Cooper. They got Njoku, and they got a phenomenal defense as well. So it can go up or it can go south for them. And I feel like they're just going to be in the middle of the pack in that AFC, sitting at probably 7 to 8 wins, especially in that division is tough. So I feel like I got them 7-10 sitting at the 4th spot. And another team right here still is probably one of the best defenses in the league. It's sad that they had to be in this division with the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals, and I feel like the only reason they're sitting at the second spot, that 3rd spot in that division, is just the quarterback play. If they had a quarterback up to par with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, I feel like they probably have the best team in that division. They went into this offseason with the clear plan to protect Kenny Pickett, to protect Najee Harris, to build up on that run game that they had the second half of the season, to build up what they did in the second half of the season last year. And, I feel like they did address those issues. They went into the draft, drafted an old lineman with their first pick. They signed some other key players in the offseason. And defensively, you got your guy back, TJ Watt, one of the best defensive players in the league. And then give me 1 second.
I'll go ahead and pick up right where you left off.
Also, just to keep in mind, the Browns, this is how they start off their season. So they play the Bengals week 1. Then they play the Steelers. Then they play the Titans. Then they play the Ravens. Then they play the 49ers. They play the Colts. And they play the Seahawks. So potentially,
where did I
2 wins.
That's a tough start to the season. I can't lie. I mean, they do have one of the hardest schedules in the league.
So they could end up with 2 wins to start off. So I mean, I don't know, man. 7-10, 8-9. That's where I sit with them.
You gonna carry on?
Nah, I'm here. I'm just waiting for Abdi to finish. Well, I forgot where I left off at, to be honest.
3. You're talking about the Steelers.
I was talking about the Steelers and Kenny Pickett. Yeah. I feel like offensively, last year the way they ended the season was pretty great. I ain't gonna lie. They put some drives together. Kenny Pickett, I think they won like 6-1 their last 7 games. Kenny Pickett has some big games, big clutch moments to finish those games. But man, I just, to me, is how can you compete with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow? That for me, it's like, hey, those two guys are top 5 quarterbacks in the league, rightfully so. And I just feel like the Steelers, they just don't have that quarterback play to take them to the next level to compete with these superstars. Maybe Kenny Pickett does come into that in a couple of years, maybe not this year, but it's going to take some time. But I do have them here, and it's going to be a dogfight between them, the Bengals, and Baltimore. They're going to be fighting, but just for me, the quarterback play. And then right here, big Joe Burrow fan, big Cincinnati fan, and like Abdi said, I just feel like they're going to be right here in this position. I feel like the defense went a little down. Obviously, health concerns in the offensive side of the ball, with Joe Burrow hurting his knee and going into the offseason like that. And then I feel like once they do get healthy,
I think a lot of us are sleeping on Deshaun Watson, man, and I actually think it's a little bit ridiculous. But
I don't know if it's just like it's a, if you it's how he ended off the season last year. Like I think for people they just feel like they have to see Deshaun Watson beat Deshaun Watson to have faith in the Browns. I think he has to prove himself.
I mean, the thing is, though, that takes time, though, man. That takes time. He wasn't able to be around the facility. He wasn't able to be around the team, and he only got a couple weeks in, and then towards the end of the season. But obviously, that wasn't him playing in the quarterback position. It was just a shell of himself. But I think with the whole training camp, with all the OTAs and all the practices, all the reps, I mean, when this guy, before he did what he did, I mean, like, he was arguably a top 5 quarterback in this league. I'm not too sure what's changed. I know a couple other guys have come
I mean, the guy hasn't played football in how long?
Even when he was playing, I don't believe he was a top 5 quarterback.
That's fair assessment.
That's absurd, bro. That's absurd. That's ridiculous, man.
Wait, what do you mean? He wasn't doing anything. Y'all just looking at what was he doing during the playoffs? Like, he has nothing to show for it. Like, the guy was doing nothing.
What do you mean? He has a playoff win, bro. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what, 1 win in 5 years?
He was on the Texans, for crying out loud, bro. He's not on the greatest team ever.
But he has to prove that he's a top 5 quarterback for him to be able to, for us to say, okay, the Browns are going to be this team that everybody is expecting them to be. Deshaun Watson has to prove himself again. That's what people are asking. It's not like a situation where Russ went to the Broncos and people were hyping up the Broncos. That was rightfully so because Russ had a good season the year before. Same thing with Rodgers to the Jets when everybody's gassing up the Jets. It's because everybody seen Aaron Rodgers play football. Deshaun Watson, when we last seen him play football, was not good. Plain and simple, he was not good. Whether you can say he didn't have reps or anything, the facts are the facts. He was not playing good. So Deshaun Watson has to prove himself again for us to say, okay, the Browns are this type of team.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll go ahead and speak my piece. I'll let Big H finish his predictions.
Yeah, so still second, still third. Bengals, I'm a big Joe Burrow fan. I just feel like the Ravens this year they came with an objective. They got their guy locked down, Lamar Jackson. They got him his receivers. They got OBJ. They picked him up. They signed him. They got Zay Flowers in the draft. It's another addition. Bateman's coming back with, from the health issues he had last year. And you add in, J.K. Dobbins and Mark Andrews. That offense is going to be phenomenal. They're switching their type of offense. They gave Lamar his pieces. And defensively, they're one of the best defensive teams too. So I feel like, overall, they're anything health-wise, if they can stay healthy and everything like that, I feel like it's to the moon. I got Cincinnati probably winning 11 games. I think the ceiling for the Ravens for me is probably 13 wins. I think they can end up with 13 or 12 wins in that division, and I feel like they got a big playoff run coming. So yeah, that's me right there.
All right, let me go ahead and pick up right where you left off at number 4. I'll get right into it. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, it's tough when you had to rank these 4 teams anyway, so somebody's got to take that 4th spot. I think Mike Tomlin's above 500 record, his above 500 record streak is going to be safe. I think these guys, they've shown that they can rip off some wins towards the end of the season to get over that 500 hump, and they'll finish above 500. I think for them, I have them around about 10 wins. If they end up with 9 wins again like last year, I mean, it's pretty close. So either around 9-8 or 10-7. So I have the Steelers there. I think it'll be interesting to see, how they implement their offense with, Najee Harris after coming off a bad year. Is he going to be able to get back to how he was his rookie season? Deontay Johnson, will he finally have a touchdown this season? George Pickens taking that year 2 leap. It really all falls on, Kenny Pickett, because we know what their defense is about. We can talk about their defense all night. We understand they have a great defense, but it all just really comes down to Kenny Pickett, their quarterback, their leader, getting these playmakers the ball, getting in the Najee Harris is really cementing himself in the run game and not having people question whether or not Jalen Warren should take a spot for that running back 1 position. But regardless, these guys are going to be competing each and every week, and they'll finish with an above 500 record, and Mike Tomlin's streak will be safe. At number 3, go for it.
What's up with this Jalen Warren gas? Like, guys see him do 1 carry, and it's like, oh, he's gonna take Najee's spot. He's the next big thing for the Steelers. Like, Najee hasn't had 2 great seasons.
I think there's some truth behind the conversation surrounding those 2 guys, man. I think Najee is a better player, is a better running back, a greater talent, but I don't know, man. When we see Najee, play the running back position and start at the running back position, it's not a lot of explosive plays that come out of that. That first year with Big Ben, it was really a whole lot of dump offs where he was really making his money at. It wasn't really going crazy in the ground game. But I think Jalen Warren kind of gives him a different type of look. That he's more of an explosive running back. It's kind of like a similar situation with Zeke and Tony Pollard, I would say, but to like a lesser degree. That's how I would best describe it.
I don't know. I don't see anything for the Jalen Warren guy. I ain't gonna lie. I fuck with Najee tough though.
Nah, bro. Najee, every time we watched him play football these last 2 years, I mean, he hasn't been efficient at all at running the football. And you can say, well, that's a combination of the poor offensive line, but at the same time, his running ability looks massively overrated every single time I've watched him. It's like his vision has been downright terrible. His ability to blow by guys, be able to run past guys, it's not there. He's like a power back, he's expected to be able to find different gaps and stuff. But every single time I watch Jalen Warren step onto the field, it's like he's going to get 6, 7, 8 yards a carry. And, I think in his rookie season last year, Jalen Warren averaged about 5 yards a carry. Of course, that's going to be bolstered by the fact that he's a change of pace kind of guy. They're always guys like Alexander Madison and Tony Pollard when they're backups. They're always going to have better yards per carry. But at the same time, Najee he's never been efficient as a runner so far in the NFL. So, I mean, I see why people are kind of highlighting Jalen Warren.
I hope Najee has a great year, though, for fantasy purposes. But if he doesn't, I have his backup, Jalen Warren, so I think I'll be in good shape. But to get back to my NFC or AFC North predictions, at number 4 we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. At number 3, this might cause a little bit of a discussion, but I'm willing to stand on it. I'm willing to go bold. I have the Baltimore Ravens will finish at the number 3 spot with a record of 11-6. I think it's going to be close between these guys and the Browns in comparison to like these guys in the Bengals. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people. It's a lot closer than people think. Lamar Jackson, he got that big contract. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All the toys that he got. But I just got to see it. I understand they have a great defense and all. But with Lamar Jackson, new offensive coordinator, all these new weapons, it could either go really, really good and they could end up, finishing number 1 like Big H has them, at 13 wins, or it could just be, just another solid season, but not really living up to all the expectation, not really living up to all the hype. And I think I'm more on that side than I am on, the other side where these guys are going to have a great offensive type of season and Lamar Jackson's going to go turn back the clock and have an MVP type season. But I just have to see it to believe it. So I have these guys finishing with a similar record with the Cleveland Browns, but the Cleveland Browns will have the tiebreaker. However they ended up doing that with like division records and stuff like that. But the Cleveland Browns will finish at that number 2 spot with an 11-6 record as well. Deshaun Watson, man. Yeah, you guys all know I'm a Deshaun Watson believer, going back to his Houston Texans days. I mean, the last time we saw this guy play a full season after going through a full training camp, all the OTAs, getting in all the reps, I mean, he finished with 4,800 passing yards and 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So, he was arguably a top 5 quarterback. I don't think there was like really a debate back then. I was pushing more so top 2, top 3. And so I think Deshaun Watson picks up right where he left off. I think what we saw from Deshaun Watson last year wasn't the real Deshaun Watson. Like I said, he was a shell of himself. That wasn't him playing. He didn't have enough time to get all the reps in with these new guys. He's coming into a new franchise, but he couldn't enter the building for about 11, 12 weeks. So he just really didn't, he wasn't able to really just, gel with the new guys. I think this Cleveland Browns offense, they have a lot of weapons. I think going out and getting a guy like Elijah Moore to complement Amari Cooper is a severely underrated move. I think Elijah Moore couldn't find himself a role with this New York Jets offense, which is fine. But I think he's found himself a new home in Cleveland for sure. I think he's going to complement Amari very well. We know what Amari Cooper's about. He's going to be their wide receiver one. And then Nick Chubb, I think Nick Chubb's going to have himself a dominant year, no doubt. There's no competition in the backfield. There's going to be no other running back that's going to be stealing his touches. Kareem Hunt is gone. He's out of the picture. It's going to be interesting to see if they make him a little bit more of a pass-catching running back. But we know what Nick Chubb is about on the ground. There's really no discussion need to be held about that. We know Nick Chubb's going to be a very efficient runner, and that's going to help out a guy like Deshaun Watson. If he can rely on Nick Chubb to get the run game going, that's going to open up the offense a lot more. And, of course, David Njoku, their tight end, he's also going to be another reliable target for Deshaun Watson. So I think Deshaun Watson is going to go back to what he was doing back in his Houston Texans days, and people might be a little bit surprised. They might be a little bit shocked, but the real Deshaun Watson fans are going to be like, this is who he always was. He just took a couple of years off of football, and what we saw from him last season, it really wasn't him. It just really wasn't him out there. So I got these guys finishing with 11-6 record, and then this being number one was the easiest decision for me. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to finish with the record of 12-5. I think the objective for these guys is to kind of just be that team that flies under the radar this year. I feel like 2 years ago when they made the Super Bowl, obviously it was Joe Burrow's coming out party. He was coming off a torn ACL. He was leading these guys to the Super Bowl. They were doing all sorts of things. They beat the Chiefs on their home turf, and unfortunately they came up short. And then coming into last season, they had all the hype in the world. Of course, these guys like in year one for Joe Burrow, technically, these guys, their defense got hot at the right time. Joe Burrow was playing great football, and so last season they got a little ahead of themselves. They're doing a little too much talking. That's what got them that L in Kansas City to Patrick Mahomes. That Super Bowl could have been theirs if you think about it. But I think with all the eyes on them, everybody talking about them, I think everything just got to them, and they did deal with some sort of injuries on the offensive line. A lot of guys were out. Cheeto Bay was out last year, so their cornerback room wasn't the strongest. I know Jesse Bates is no longer there, but a rookie that I talked about last year, Daxton Hill, will be filling in that role. So I think he'll be able to, year two, he'll be able to, be pretty decent. He won't be playing up to Jesse Bates type of level, but I think he'll be pretty solid. But these guys are going to be flying under the radar a lot, man. These guys are going to be that team that just racks up a lot of wins. They won't be in the news too much. They won't be making headlines unless it's like some sort of big matchup they got on their schedule, and they'll just be that team that kind of coasts all the way to the AFC Championship game. Will they end up being the number one seed in the AFC? I don't think so. I think Kansas City is going to end up getting that number one seed regardless, rain or shine. But I do think they have an AFC Championship game berth in their future, and I think Joe Burrow is looking to get back to that Super Bowl and to cap off this year with a Super Bowl. And so, that's my predictions for the AFC North. I just feel like it's between the Browns and the Ravens. That's probably going to be the closest battle. I don't think it's going to be a close battle between the Bengals and all those other teams. Because I just feel like the Bengals they're loaded way more than any other team in that division. I understand Lamar got all these new toys, but it ain't no Jamar Chase. It ain't no T. Higgins. But the one guy that has to step up this year, he took a pay cut to stay with this team to win a Super Bowl, have the opportunity to win one, is Joe Mixon. That's the guy that needs to step up for this team, for these guys to kind of get to where they want to go. He had a great season 2 years ago. He was solid on the ground, but last year he took a massive step back, and that hurt the Cincinnati Bengals a lot. And so I think this is the year, with him taking a pay cut, with him understanding the bigger picture, knowing that they have a Super Bowl window right now. I think he ends up having a solid season for himself, and he's going to play a huge part in this Bengals run. So that's my AFC North predictions. But I think it's going to be a dogfight regardless, man. No matter which way you cut the cake, this is going to be a bloodbath.
Do you think you're handing out too many wins though? Just because, what's the likelihood that like a team goes 9-8, and then another team goes 10-7, and two other teams win 10 and 11 games all in one division? Do you think you're handing out too many wins?
I might be handing out a little too many wins, but I think regardless, it's going to be a one game. One game is going to separate all these teams. That's because of how tough all these teams are. This is one of the best divisions in football. So I can't see like somebody taking a significant leap or having a significant gap, between each other, regardless of how good all these teams are. So I think one game, I think is fair to say that's what's going to separate a lot of these teams. The Bengals will have that one game separation. the Browns will have that tiebreaker over the Ravens. And then between the Steelers and the Ravens at 3 and 4, it's going to be maybe 1 to 2 game separation at the most. And that'll be just for the Steelers, because I think 9 and 8 or 10 and 7 is what their outlook is for this upcoming season. But because you look at it, their record last year, we can't really look at it and judge it, because Deshaun Watson didn't play for a majority of the season, and they finished with 7 wins. The Steelers finished with 9 wins. The Ravens finished with 10 wins, but Lamar Jackson was out for majority of the season, and the Cincinnati Bengals finished with 12 wins. So, health issues aside and injuries aside, if all of these 4 teams have like their key guys healthy for the course of the season, 1 to 2 game separation or 1 to 2 game difference is kind of what's going to separate a lot of these teams. But
a lot of jihad gonna happen in that division for sure.
I mean, I just love the animosity and the hatred they have for one another, man. It's
Each
unlike
team
any other division. I can't think of a division that hates like that much. They hate each other that much.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lakes, now that's overkill.